you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join Doctors Joanne and Aaron as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
Welcome to this episode of Create Meaning in Medicine. And I'm here with one of my favorite people, Dr. Erin Hurley. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit of a different subject. We're going to be talking about transparency in relationships. And it might seem like one of those straightforward things of course, that's important, but yet we don't always really look at it. So as you guys know, we like to bring in things that maybe are not as easy to talk about, but we believe they're important for the quality of life that we want to build and reason why we're here. So let's dive straight to it. So Erin, tell us, how can we define this concept of transparency?
The first things that come to mind is what transparency is not. And I can think of one of my clients that talked about the facade she had to put up because of the culture she was raised in and how exhausting it was. And so by being ourselves, can we show up as ourselves without a facade and not feeling fake? And sometimes that even means that we need to be a little bit vulnerable to show our real side. In medicine, so oftentimes I think we show up as, I'm fine, I've got it all put together, I can't look not perfect because I'm a doctor and a respected clinician in my neighborhood or in my organization. You might be a leader. What would it look like if I'm not perfect? And yet we're not robots. And so can we sometimes show those kinks in our armor, those flaws enough so that we can be appreciated for the whole person that we are and not this image that we oftentimes, this perfect image of a physician that we may think that we need to show up as.
Wow, what a good distinction, because I believe that for the most part, we're good, honest people. We don't go around manipulating, being fake or lying. But yet that doesn't mean that we're being our true selves and having that transparency within ourselves and in relationships. And something that you said made me think of, this is more of something that I say when I'm with my patients, but it's important because a lot of times we're struggling, but we have roles that we are in, whether it's at work or with our family, with friends, and we might not always want to show that we're struggling, probably with good intentions, but it is exhausting, like Erin said, to keep up a good face. It's emotionally draining, and sometimes you don't have a place that feels safe enough to recharge and really be yourself. So I think that's a really good distinction. Thank you for bringing it that way. And then saying, right, like the question of, are you really honest about who you are and what's important to you and what you need? I think that those are sometimes the better questions to ask ourselves, especially as heart-driven, giving physicians that a lot of us are. So good, Erin. And moving on. So why do you think this is important? I know that we talked a little bit already about it, specifically for women in medicine.
As I alluded to before, women in medicine are so short on time and energy, and putting on a facade, showing up as somebody who you are not being true with your relationships takes so much time and energy from us. And what if we can just show up as ourselves? So energy and time stealers. And we talk about that energy tank of ours, where are the leaks? Not showing up as ourselves can be one of those. Also, when we show the world we're fine, whether that's with our partner or spouse, or whether that's with the leadership at work, and we show up as everything's fine when it's not, how are they supposed to support us for what our true needs are or see through that? We can't assume they know what's going on with us if it's in our head and we never voice it, we never show up with those struggles. It's hard for our community around us to really know how to best support or help us. So I'm fine versus I need help, two different personas that show up and two different ways to be seen. And then knowing what we need as a woman physician, if we are clear in what we need and we can show up as someone who's vulnerable enough to ask for what we need, that can kind of plug those energy holes so much more quickly. We don't have to dance around assuming your spouse knows that you need dinner by the time you get home, or that they know where you want to go for your birthday or for an anniversary celebration. And so for me, when I'm super transparent, maybe I've shared this before. It was October several years ago. I went shopping at a department store and I saw this pink pendant that I loved. And I came home that night. I showed a picture of it to my husband. I said, this is on sale. It's at this specific department store. And this is what I want for Christmas. Super transparent. And actually, I didn't even have to wait till Christmas. The very next day, I came home from work and there's this beautiful box sitting on my pillow of the exact pendant I wanted. Talk about transparency, right? Versus, oh, I really like this, or it'd be nice to have some jewelry. And my husband's like, I don't know how to make her happy. I was super transparent, black and white, especially for men, and no beating around the bush. And I was transparent, and he, I made it easy for him to show me what I was wanting for my holiday gift. And that might seem really silly.
I love to remind people that even your closest person, frequently it's like a spouse or best friend, they cannot read your mind. And a lot of times we have these expectations of the people around us that they should just know, right? Like this is important in relationships. But then at work, it's also that kind of discouragement. And I love how you said it. How can we get what we really need if we're not voicing it, and how important it is to voice it very specifically. I love that. Something that came to mind while I was hearing you talk was that one of the most important things for me, like one of my values, is to be a role model. And I think about it in terms of my kids first and foremost, but then also everyone around me. And I see it as a good sense of accountability. But yet I had a coach once said, what would you do differently if you had a camera crew following you all the time? And it's like, oh goodness, right? Like when we stop and think about it, we're like, oh my God, will I eat that? Will I say that? Will I be in Instagram that long? Right. So it's not about perfection. It's about really looking inward, and because we have to start with that honesty within ourselves and then transparency within ourselves before we can give it to someone else and ask for what we really need. So I don't know, that came to my mind as part of this conversation, because it's so many angles that we can take this topic and really kind of tweak, right? Like these are adjustments that we can create in our lives to grow, to be a better person, to create that ripple effect that we talk so much about. Love that, what the examples you gave us.
Well, and I love that about what am I willing to let other people see in my life, and also how close are they to me? And when I shared about vulnerability, we want to have intention with that. We don't want to just share everything with everyone. We want to be mindful, because for some people, seeing the messy things in our lives would, may not be invoking of trust in a patient relationship, but yet it might be okay to share some things with your supervisor at work so that they better understand what's happening in your life or why you're showing up that way. So bringing intention to that, and yet that camera crew thing, thinks, what if everybody saw all of my choices throughout the day? How would they be with that? Love that visual.
Right. So insightful. And we've said a few things already, but Erin, what would be some more specific things that we could do to be more transparent? It sounds like straightforward, but it's really not. How can we approach it?
One of the first things is taking time to reflect and asking for feedback. So, for example, I was coaching a leader in medicine, and they had a meeting with one of their staff. And I asked, well, how do you think this went? And then I asked, how do you think they thought it went? And do you ever take the opportunity to loop back around if there's nerves or anxiety or fear or maybe a challenge during that conversation? Can we take time to pause and reflect for ourselves, but also loop back around to make sure that we're not making an incorrect assumption of how that went for the other person? We might thought that we did a great job and we didn't do so well. Or we might have thought like, oh man, I just bombed that meeting, even though I put intention. And the other person might say, man, I really felt seen. Thank you for being the leader that I need. So one is asking for feedback and taking time to reflect. And that allows you then to learn for your next interaction with individuals. Number 2 is having intention, knowing what's appropriate, how to show up in different circumstances, and even the timing of your circumstances. If somebody just had a tragedy happen in their life, showing up a super buoyant self, maybe you do need to tamper that down a little bit. So having intention for what the context is and what the setting is. So we don't go, as Brendan Burchard, that we always quote, is fond of saying, let's not go bumbling into circumstances. Let's bring intention and pay attention to the details such as timing and context. The other is something I've learned from a new friend of mine. They schedule meetings every week on the calendar with their spouse, an hour-long meeting every week. Talk about transparency with your partner. With every week you have a check-in. Every week you're accountable. Every week showing up as yourself so that you can help each other understand where you're really at, how you can support each other, and really not losing sight of, as Joanne said, one of the most important relationships in your life if you're married or have a partner. So powerful. And also role modeling. I think maybe I should bring that into my marriage. And how might that change how I can show up? And maybe being able to get to a deeper level of understanding with having those regularly scheduled check-ins. And then 4th is, let's not be afraid to have what you might consider a challenging conversation. For me, I run 2 businesses with my sister. We run short-term rentals in Costa Rica, and we have had to learn and grow over the last few years. We have very different perspectives on how we spend money, on time and energy expenditures. And so she might be on one end of the spectrum from me, and I might be on the other. And yet, if we don't have ongoing communication about when you say this, this is how I receive it. When we make this choice, this is how it impacts me. We've had many ongoing conversations, and we just had a conversation a few days ago. And I just said, this is how this feels to me. I needed her to be able to understand that so she could support me in a different way. And was it easy to say that? It wasn't, but I said it with intention and love and caring for my sister, and out of respect that we need to have an ongoing relationship to have a successful business and not allow the business to ruin our close relationship as sisters. So sometimes those hard conversations are the exact way that you grow with individuals. So those are the 4 things that I can think of as really the how-to implementing for being transparent in our relationships.
I love it when we're having these discussions and I'm taking notes and being like, yikes, I have work to do. There's places for improvement, right? And isn't that the big purpose of this podcast and this work that we're doing, is for that continuous growth, always striving to be better, not just for ourselves, for the people around us. And love this topic and kind of the twists that you gave it and those distinctions. I think that's a really good way to approach this subject. And kind of it makes me think of how often we talk a lot about this, of how often we feel kind of tired and emotionally exhausted, and how often could it be what you're saying of your client, of keeping up a facade and just keeping up a good face and just having those places where you can be more vulnerable, more honest, and be more of your true self, even though obviously that's not always easy in certain environments, but how protective it could be for your sense of self and your emotions. So thank you for that. And And I love the importance of how often it's easy to fall into that complaint that we're not getting what we want, but the honesty of saying, are you really being transparent or those things of what, voicing it out loud of what you need and how that can make any relationship so much stronger, including the one with yourself. And the tools that you gave us of take time to reflect and ask for feedback, have intention always, one of our favorite words, and how cool that schedule meetings. So we hear a lot about having a date in your calendar, but I love that. Let's have a meeting. Let's talk about what's going on. And then it's not like the waiting and be like, let's have a conversation. Then it's just the expectation, and it's, I bet, so much easier to do. And the importance of having that deeper level of understanding and taking away that fear of having the difficult conversations that can give you that way better, deeper relationship later on. So love all these tools. Thank you. And anything else that you would like to give us, any other nuggets about this topic?
One statement that rings true to this is said by Brene Brown: clear is kind. And can we be clear and kind, and instead of beating around the bush or not sharing what we really need to share with individuals around us? So clear is kind. Keep that in mind. Super simple to remember, and allow that to grow your relationships even deeper than you thought was possible.
And talking about transparency and voicing what we need, we would love for you to rate and review our podcast, and even more if you can share with whoever you think can benefit from this. And don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Our next episode is coming right up.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.